talk about the pull-up. So the pull-up is kind of the sexy, the coveted, the often sought-after movement in CrossFit. And CrossFit really popularized the kipping pull-up. Now, it existed before. It's been a gymnastics thing forever. But CrossFit really utilized the fact that, hey, we can get kind of normal people in the door. We can show them a few coordination drills and get them to be able to kip and do a pull-up. And then we can put it on the videos and they can tell their friends, and it just becomes this really, holy crap, it's the pull-up. Now, I understand the draw to that. However, we want to take some precautions before we just start throwing everyone on the barbell and have them kipping around, because ultimately it is a very demanding movement on the shoulders. So if you think of the shoulder itself, basically your, I almost said femur, humerus sits right in that socket, but there's not much depth to the socket. So ultimately it's like it's basically equivalent to a golf ball sitting on a golf tee, okay? Whereas your hip socket, it sits pretty deep into that socket, right? Now the shoulder is much more open, so it can move around quite a bit. So it's really just supported by a lot of small muscles, some big muscles kind of connect, around, and then a lot of connective tissue. So if you think about a kipping pull-up, basically you're finding the way to utilize momentum to throw yourself over the bar, and then you're just falling down and catching yourself, and ultimately catching yourself on connective tissue, unless you've got a lot of strength and stability through the shoulders. So we do a lot of, I guess, prehab type of stuff for our shoulders to try to build in strength and stability. That's why we're always doing a lot of bear crawls and handstands, things like halos and loaded carries. All those things, again, are geared to kind of building more stability through the shoulders, because it is such a joint that really needs that stability. And at the same time, we look to make sure that we have adequate range of motion through the shoulders. So a really big problem would be if you had really tight shoulders that didn't have strong stability. So now, if you fail a shoulder screen, where I say just put your hands up, can you touch the wall behind you? If you can't do that, then your shoulders are so tight. But yet, if I threw you up on the bar and said, swing around and do a bunch of kipping pull-ups, well, your body weight and the momentum is going to push you through those restrictions. And no, you may not break on day one, you may not break on month one, but eventually, if you don't fix that issue, something's going to happen. It's like taking a paperclip and just bending it back and forth, back and forth. It's not going to break right away, but eventually it's going to break. So we want to take the precautions. Again, I talked about the prehab exercises that we do, but when we talk about just getting into a pull-up and jumping into a band, and we'll talk about bands here in a second, we want to make sure that we have some adequate strength. And so kind of our test for that is, can you do a couple of chin-ups? Strict. Can you do a couple of pull-ups? Strict. If you can do that, then that shows me that you have enough strength and stability through your shoulders to control your own body weight. Then we can start practicing and playing with some kipping. If you don't have those things, you're basically just kind of asking for trouble, okay? And CrossFit is fairly known for a lot of shoulder trouble, which is why we try to do as much as we can to kind of, one, keep it from happening, and two, do the preventative stuff to make everything stronger. So I did want to mention some stuff on banded pull-ups. We don't do those here. I know that a lot of CrossFit gyms, that's kind of their staple, their go-to. Now what we're doing is we're taking an athlete that has proven that they don't have the strength to be able to do a regular pull-up, and we're giving them assistance via a band. So when you do a banded pull-up, at the bottom range of motion, the band is under its greatest tension, so it's giving you the most help. This is the point where you're basically saying, hey, I never need to get strong in this point, the first 3 to 6 inches of the pull. You don't need to get stronger because the band's doing all the work for you. As you pull up higher and higher, obviously the band is decreasing its tension, and so you have to utilize more muscles. Now, if you ask most people that don't have a pull-up or a chin-up, you say hang from the bar and try to do a pull-up or a chin-up. It's that they just can't pull the first 3 inches. If you find someone that can pull the first 3 to 6 inches of a chin-up or a pull-up, you just work on some negatives, and they've got a pull-up or chin-up in a couple of weeks. So we don't use bands. There's also been some instances where bands slip off people's feet and they put people's eyes out. There's been CrossFit boxes that have been sued for this exact scenario. So that is obviously something we don't want to have happen. So a real quick note as well, we're going to do chin-ups as well. Okay, so I had an instance where in Memphis I had a girl come in from a box in Boston, and the workout had chin-ups in it. And she said, chin-ups? What do you mean chin-ups? We do pull-ups. And I said, well, today we're going to do chin-ups. And she said, why do you do chin-ups? And I said, why don't you do chin-ups? So chin-ups are absolutely necessary to develop that strength in that supinated grip position. So when we do a pull-up, we're here in a pronated grip. When we do a chin-up, we're here in a supinated grip. So the difference, and you can kind of see that right off the bat, is here we're going to get a lot more recruitment through the lat. Here we're going to get a lot more recruitment through the bicep. You can just see that activate. So if you think about a rope climb is a movement that involves a supinated grip. And so if you never do any chin-ups and then you go to try to climb a rope, you're going to be much weaker than the person that is used to doing chin-ups. So that is something that we definitely want to focus on. And it's just good to get kind of all ranges of motion. So we try to switch up the hand grips, the distance, all those things need to kind of make a change from time to time. So that is your little video on pull-ups and chin-ups. I hope you got something out of it. So now you can kind of really focus on the progressions and the regressions that we have available, and eventually you can get to the point where you can do that strict set of pull-ups and chin-ups. All right, guys, take it easy.